I'm going to go post it that we are live. Hey, guys. I don't think I've done an author chat back-to-back in ever, actually.
Oh, cool.
So, woohoo. So, guys, thank you for coming. I am going to go toss this on. I completely just spelled that completely wrong, but I'm just gonna let it go because Twitter don't have edits. We are here today for our second show and last show of the week with author Corey Ann. Is it Haydu?
Haydu, yeah.
Haydu, yes. I love all these easy names. With Evercurse, and this cover is so
I
pretty.
know.
Oh my
they
God.
did such a great job.
I kind of went overboard with the one GIF video thing that I made for it because I just tossed every single moving flower I possibly could with it. So I'm like, I love it, but it's kind of a lot of flowers. So many flowers.
I love it.
I love this. It worked so well with this, though. This is so pretty. So, did anything change for the finished copy? Like glossy? Is it like matte like this?
How crazy is it that I do not have finished copies yet? COVID has sort of put a delay on everything. So I have like the one arc that I had before COVID happened, and that's it. And I assume I'll get author copies, whenever they're able to get those out. But yeah, I'm curious if it's going to be like shiny, if it's going to be have some texture.
I don't know.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. This comes out like 4 days before my birthday. So.
Oh, yay.
This is so pretty.
Thank
everybody's doing flowers right now. All right. So, of course, as usual, guys, if you have any questions, you can toss them in the live chat below. For some reason, YouTube is being very mean to you today and will not permit you to do that for whatever reason. You can tweet them out to me, DM me, or toss them onto a post on Instagram or DM me on there. Ask her questions and I shall find them. I've got my phone here with some questions and we're going to get the show on the road. So I always like to start the show off with a little bit about you and your books and your quest to being an author or your journey to being an
author. Totally. So I have been publishing since 2013. When my first book came out, but I was not a writer originally. I went to college to be an actress and was acting in New York for about 5 years after college. Yeah, and man, that industry is tough. And I started getting to the point where I would get calls for auditions, and I would be really annoyed that they were going to break into my writing time. And it was like, maybe I don't want to be an actress as much as I thought if that's my first response to getting auditions and jobs. So I sort of had like a epiphany moment of like, wait a minute, it's writing that's the thing I look forward to every day and I'm actually making time for and actually feel like focused and passionate and excited about. So maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I worked on the publishing side of things for a little bit to sort of learn the business and figure out what it was I wanted to do and what kind of stuff I wanted to write. And I just happened to work for a children's and young adult literary agency, and I knew nothing about that world and just started voraciously reading all the YA that was coming out in 2010 and 2011 and fell in love and ended up sort of being like, oh, wait, I want to be a children's author. I want to be a young adult author.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an exciting moment to piece together everything that I wanted to do and find my place and be like, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be.
So how many books have you published total?
Oh boy. Maybe Evercurse might be my 9th or 10th. I have a chapter book series that just debuted this summer, and so that's adding books in a quicker way than the novel length ones do. Either 9th or 10th will be Evercurse. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I've taken about 3.5 years off from young adult. I've been really focused on my middle grade, and my last young adult novel, The Careful Undressing of Love, was out in early 2017. So it's been a minute since I've had a YA out. So I'm really excited to re-enter that world. It was what I was first writing, and it's nice to return to that space again.
And this is a standalone, correct?
It is, yes, yes.
It's like no surprises.
No cliffhangers.
Yes, I did that with the last one that I did her show today for Sarah Henning. That I'm like, I'm thinking this book is a standalone, and then I get towards the end, I'm like, wait a second, this is cliffhanger. What's going on?
What's happening?
And it's like, oh no, it's a duology. I'm like,
oh, that's so funny.
right, let's see. So we have a question. It is a beautiful cover. It is so gorgeous.
Thank you.
Did you have any say on the design?
Zero. I mean, it's actually one of my favorite parts of the process is when I just open up my email and like, there it is, the email that says, Corey, we have a cover for you. And I am always shocked, and I've never been disappointed. I've gotten beautiful covers my whole career. And this one especially, because it's my first, I've written sort of magical books before, but this is really the first one set in an entirely different world than our own. And so to have like a more sort of fantasy feeling cover was exciting, because it's just, you know, my other YA is mostly contemporary or contemporary with like light magic. So I've had, you know, covers that have reflected that. So this one really surprised me. I was like, oh my gosh, I wrote something like more in the fantasy realm. Who knew? And I love the colors. I'm like a big rose gold person anyway. And so having like that rose gold font was, yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know we were doing that.
I mean, it just works so well with all the different flowers. And then like this, I don't know exactly what it is, because it almost blends into the cover, like the purple.
Yeah.
And it has like some braided hair
Mm-hmm.
on it. I mean, the elements of this, I mean, it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, they really worked in like a lot of details and a lot of little things from the book that you sort of have to look at the cover really closely to piece together.
To it out.
Yeah.
So pretty though. Okay, so when I started the book, of course, and the one girl, I'm so horrible at names. I think
I am too. I forget my own names that I've written, so don't worry.
Is talking about like how they're going to break this curse, because of course this deals with their mother was cursed and they were all cursed for that. When they hit their 13th birthday, something would be taken away from them. So Jane, of course, hasn't eaten anything in 5 years. And I thought that was very inventive, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And she's like, you know, what are they going to have to give up? And they mentioned avocados. I'm like, no, no giving up the avocados.
What horrible curse is this?
Yes. I just thought it was kind of like, it's a very odd, you know, kind of out of left field that you would mention avocados, because it's not, you know, it's weird. But I love it. I love avocados. Avocados are amazing.
I love to include like very, very specific details like that make people be like, huh, what? And I think it sort of adds a little bit to the texture.
Because they mention it during the end as well, you know, where they have like the force of avocados. Love it. Love it. All right. So the girls are cursed so differently. How did you decide who received which curse, and how did you come up with all of them?
You know, I had played with a couple of different sort of ideas of what they might be, and I really wanted to make sure that there was some variation. Like some of the girls are cursed with things like not eating and not sleeping that are very like physical and like dangerous physically. And then the other girls are cursed with things that are more like cerebral and emotional and hurt them and impact them in those ways, in those like heart ways, not being able to hope or remember or love. And so I wanted to sort of have the right balance of things that would hurt you physically and things that would hurt your heart, and sort of see how those things also wind together, right? Like things that hurt you physically, like also hurt your heart, and things that hurt you heart, like also can really affect you physically. And so to sort of play with those dynamics.
Well, it definitely worked.
Thank you.
Let's see. The setting, of course, of Ever and the End Knot, I think is what it was called.
End Knot, yeah.
How did you come up with this vast world? I mean, this book is not that long. I mean, it's what, like 300 or see, it's like, it's like just over 300 pages, but it felt like it was, you know, way, way longer. And you give such great descriptions of like the world around them, everything. How did you create this world?
Really little by little. Like in early drafts of this book, there was less magic, there was sort of less description, less really happening in that world, less rules. Like it took a lot of time to sort of keep zeroing in on the specifics of the world and how it was all gonna like interlock and make sense. So yeah, it sort of built over time. I wrote this book probably over the course of a year and a half, probably, maybe even close to 2 years. And every draft just sort of adding more and more layers. And a lot of things changed, there'd be something in there. And then as we'd figure out more of the story, my editor and I, things in the world would have to change. And that's kind of a cool part of writing things in a different world, is like the story and the setting have to make sense together. So you change story plot things and you're like, oh, wait a minute, now this setting element doesn't make sense, or now the rules of this world like need to be kind of shifted around. So yeah, it was like a really slow process of sort of coming up with ideas draft by draft of how to fill it out and make it more, not just like more beautiful and interesting from a descriptive sense, but more like urgent and complicated, from an emotional sense, and what in the world can put pressure on those girls, on those princesses.
All right. See, the magic in this one is very interesting. I have read a lot of books about witches, and I'm really glad you didn't call anybody a warlock. Everybody's a witch regardless of their gender. Yes. Yep. Yes. It irks me so much when books go back to that old thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love the idea of, for every spell that they do, they get these skirts. That was so neat, because I mean, especially with all the flowers on the front of it, because if you just turn a flower upside down, it looks like a dress.
Oh,
so it kind of ties back into,
I like that,
the whole cover.
Mm-hmm.
And everything. So like these witches with these dresses and these spells, I mean, can these things are on them forever? They can never take them off.
Yeah,
so, like,
exactly.
If you take a shower, you got this with you.
It's there. It's not going anywhere. Which I like love. I mean, I loved it. That was one of those details that sort of, I knew I wanted the spells to have weight of some kind, to have to be carried in some way, to have a physical component. Like I sort of knew the vibe I wanted, but I couldn't put my finger on like what that would be. Like what's the thing that happens when they cast a spell? I knew I wanted their magic to have weight, and for them to not be able to do it casually. And because this book does sort of address like femininity and like the weight of that in some ways, over time it became clear, like, oh, skirts, like something about that would work well with this world where we're talking about sort of the pressure of being a princess or a witch or a girl or a person in this world. And yeah, so the skirt sort of over time became like, ooh, that's it. That's the symbol. That's like the thing that's going to weigh them down and like make them hurt for the things they've done. And I don't know. And I just relate to them, like, being like a cisgendered girl in the world, like putting on skirts has meaning to me in a way too. Like that it has meaning to me. It like has a feeling to it. And there's days that you're like, I don't want to wear this thing. Like, I don't want, I don't care. I'm going to a wedding. Like, why do I have to have this? And sort of grappling with some of those feelings is in there too.
So did you like come up with a list on like for like specific spells on like what fabric that skirt would be made out of? So I know like, the sleeping spell, she got a burlap skirt.
Mm-hmm.
And one that her mother and her mom's friend did, they got a wool skirt. And then, towards the end, they have, a very light one. So how did you come up with deciding on what each skirt was made out of versus what spell they had cast?
Yeah, I really wanted it to correspond with like the strength of the spell. So the stronger the spell, the heavier the fabric is going to be, the more weight you're going to have to sort of drag along with you and the rest of your life. And if it's a sort of light and fun and frothy spell, that the skirt will be that sort of light and fun and frothy material. But yeah, I definitely had to look up. I was like, what's the heaviest material? There's a lot of Googles of like, what's a pretty light material? What's a sort of troubling soft material? Yeah, I sort of did a lot of that, figuring out what really captured that feeling I wanted of like weight or lightness or whatever. Yeah.
That was definitely like, that is so original, because I've never read anything even remotely close to that, like ever. So that was very interesting.
Thank
Like,
you.
completely. All right, so let me check social media really quick and see if anybody tossed any questions on here. Okay, so this one's about editing. When you send your book back to the editor for a first or second draft or whichever you're working with, how do you get notes back? Does your editor just give you notes, or do they ask you to completely rewrite sections? And do they give you hints on what you should rewrite those sections as?
Totally. It really varies depending on where I am in the process, and also who the editor is and what that relationship looks like. For this one, it was sort of an interesting process because I wrote it over such a long period of time. I also I sold the book, a proposal for the book right before I had a baby. So I sort of took off like a 4-month period where I wasn't writing really, and then jumped back in and had a whole different mind happening. So for this one, there was early sort of communication back and forth, just like emails, bringing up different ideas. But as things got more complicated, we actually sat down and had a meeting. My editor, her assistant, and I happen to live in New York, so I can sort of get into the office and do like a sit down with them. And that's where the book really came together. Like with this book, I really needed to like hash it out in person, brainstorm, come up with stuff as like a collaborative team. And so that's like the big picture process. And of course, later there's more like micro stuff about this sentence in this chapter and, that type of stuff. But with this book, a lot of the work with my editor was like big picture. What is the book about? What is the world like? What's the kind of arc of the story for all of these characters? It was a really lucky thing because you don't always get a chance to like sit down face to face and talk with editors about the book in that way. But for this one, we got to do that and got to really like brainstorm it together.
Awesome. Let's see. This story covers some pretty dark themes.
Yeah.
How did you decide to deal with those without delving too far into them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was important to me to have a content warning at the beginning of the book, which there is both for disordered eating and for sexual assault. So anyone that's picking up the book, thinking about it, that is marked in the front of the book, but also just to know it here. So that's the first thing. I knew that was a topic that I would write at some point. That's something that is personal for me and that I've always sort of known, like whenever I'm ready, whenever the time is right, like that will be a place I go. And the time was sort of right. And for me, like, I think books handle this in a million different ways, and you can handle it in any way done right. Done with emotion and done with research and done with care for your reader. And for me, the way to do that was to have a subtlety to the sort of logistics of it, because ultimately, like looking back on my experience with assault, like the logistics, the technical how it happened and what it looked like and all, that was like somewhat less important than like the reaction of the world and the reaction of me and like how I moved in the world. After that. Mm-hmm. So that was my focus. That's what I was interested in. And I think, I think there's authors that do it beautifully on the page where you really get deep into that moment. But for me, that just wasn't the way I wanted to tell this story.
I mean, that makes sense because, it had happened in the past.
Yeah.
So, knowing what had happened and then dealing with the outcome of it, I think worked a lot better for the story versus having to like basically do like a rewind of what had actually step by step had happened.
Totally.
You really didn't need it.
Yeah. And you don't want it to be this, for me, I don't want something like that to be this like juicy plot twist or this,
Right.
salacious thing. You want it to be it's a serious thing. And the way I'm able to write that with seriousness is with a little bit of distance and subtlety. And I also think as people that survive assault, like there is sometimes a distance to that, and there is a loss of the memory of every single thing that happened and every, how it all happened. Like those things are just less important to me. But, which just isn't to say, I think there's, like I said, a ton of books that would do it differently and do it beautifully as well.
Yeah, I think it worked out a lot better the way that you did it, because you really don't need to delve into everything, unless the story calls for it.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, I always love these. How would you describe your book in 3 words?
Oh gosh.
Haven't had that question in a while.
I don't want to take the easy road out. Would be me saying feminist fairy tale. So I'm going to try not to say that. I would say, oh boy. Ooh, royalty. No, power, friendship, secrets.
That works. Those are so hard.
Or feminist fairy tale.
Right? Those are so hard.
Really hard.
Cool. Are you working on anything now?
Yes, I'm working on quite a few things. As I said, I had a new chapter book series that started this summer, and that has 2 more books forthcoming. That's called Hand Me Down Magic, and that's for like ages 6 and up. And so those are really fun. A fun sort of break isn't the right word, but like a way to get away from these really dark books, to sort of spend time in that lighter world, younger world. So I'm working on those. I have a new middle grade novel coming out in 2021 called One Jar of Magic that actually like has some thematic overlap with this book, which I didn't really realize until they're both completed. And you're like, huh. These are both like a lot about abuse of power. And I did not know that I was, I guess I did know I was so interested in abuse of power in this moment of time, but I didn't know I was writing about it in 2 different books, in 2 different genres, in 2 different age categories. So that was sort of funny to realize. So that's coming out in February of 2021. And then I am working on another young adult novel. I think maybe it will come out in 2022, but it's still very much in process. So it doesn't have a title at the moment, but it is a verse novel, which is the first time I have written a verse novel, and I'm really excited about it. And it is a multi-generational, multiple perspective novel in verse.
Oh, wow. So how is that different from writing, something like this?
It's it's really, I've found it a really good place to be during this period of time where my brain is a little bit, this, I think for a lot of us, our brains are a little tired in this moment in time with COVID and with just the world the way it is. And so verse for me, you can sort of really focus in on like one moment, and it's coming easier for me than like writing long chapters and having to, for some reason, like a traditional prose novel feels a lot harder for me right now, where my brain is sort of able to focus on like small moments and, fragmented sentences and telling a story sort of in that unusual way. So it's been a really good match for this period of time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you been reading anything?
Yes, of course. Let's see. I always like to recommend my very favorite current young adult novel, which came out a couple years ago, but is totally underrated is the wrong word, because everyone that's read it loves it, but I still find people who haven't read it. So Calling My Name by Liara Tamani is just one of the best young adult novels that's come out in the last few years. And it's also just a really quick read. It's told in it's not verse, but it's told in sort of short vignettes, and so it has a little bit of that feeling. If your brain is also sort of able to handle one thing at a time right now, that book is really lovely in that way. So that's one of the favorite things I've read recently. I'm really excited about Brandy Colbert's The Voting Booth, which is coming out, I believe, on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, that's book 2, right?
No,
Okay,
it's a
no.
standalone. It's a standalone. So that should be a big thing I'm excited for. And Anna Marie McLemore's books are, if fairy tales are up your alley, they also write really beautiful fairy tale retellings and fairy tale imaginings. And I really recommend their books very heartily, as well as Alana Arnold's Damsel, for sort of similar content.
Yeah,
So
I think the back of your book said that it was for fans of Damsel.
yeah. I certainly hope so, because I think Damsel is an incredible book. So I hope fans of that book find something in mine as well. So those are sort of my favorite in the YA world. I've been reading a lot of adult during this period of time, just because when I'm writing a lot of YA in middle grade, it's harder for me to read it. And I teach as well, so I'm reading a lot of YA in middle grade from my students. And so adult novels have been sort of my break from.
Are you a teacher?
Yeah, I teach at the Vermont College of Fine Arts, graduate, their master's in writing for children program.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool. So can like their stories ever actually like go anywhere? Like if you think that, they're really good, can you like submit them to be like published or anything, or would they be able to do that? Or
they would certainly do that on their own. A ton. I mean, it's a really awesome program. If anyone listening is interested in writing for children, it's a really cool program that a lot of probably your favorite writers have come out of. It has a huge success rate. Really incredible authors have come out of that program, and it has a really prestigious and great faculty. And it's a low residency program. So, I mean, right now it's a very low residency program, a no residency program. But usually you go up to Vermont for 2 weeks every 6 months and just like focus on your writing. And it's amazing. And then work remotely with a teacher the rest of the time. And so that's my other big job that takes up a lot of my time and heart.
That's really cool, though.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, well, that is all of the questions that I have for you today.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys, for next week, I have 4 authors coming on. First off, we are going to be celebrating In the Neighborhood of Truths from Suzanne Carlton, her paperback release. Then we are also going to be talking with, I don't have a copy of this book right this second, A Speculative of Souls by Jessica Julian. And then one of my favorite authors who actually lives down here in Florida, who I am so excited that she said yes, that she's coming on the show, because like they have made movies out of her books. And that is Alex Flynn.
Oh, cool.
And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. So. But this is also another July book. And then we also have Lori Forrest will be coming back on with 2 of her favorite authors that are self-published, Keys of Origin by Melissa A. Joy and Starlight by Celine Callan. And you guys can check out all of those times for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on the site. I have not made the links for those yet. So you cannot RSVP as of yet. I am behind. So I will catch you guys later.